Welcome to an all-new Restoration Today podcast
brought to you by NextGear Solutions, now part of CoreLogic. NextGear is the preferred technology provider for the restoration industry and serves managed repair networks, franchisors, contractors, and insurance carriers looking to run a consistently smarter business. Manage your jobs from anywhere and communicate with customers in real time. Visit nextgearsolutions.com to learn how NextGear can help you transform your restoration business today. Hello there. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I am very excited to be joined by Garret Gray, who is making news again. It's what he does, I suppose. So as of this week, we are recording this in early March. He has been named the president of Protect for CoreLogic's. So Garret, congratulations. So I'm going to toss it over to you in a second, but I kind of want to lay some groundwork of kind of your journey in restoration so then we can dive into the conversation. So you founded NextGear in 2008. And then in 2016, I think is when you really started making your moves. You could kind of see into the future, and Sarant Capital, a PE firm, got involved in NextGear. So then between 2016 and 2021, you bought Client Runner, Mika, Moisture Mapper, Luxor CRM, and Accurance, and kind of built the NextGear platform to have all of these different elements within it. So then September of last year, you sold to CoreLogic. October, then you took over the claims side of CoreLogic. And then as of this week, you're the president of Protect. So here we are today. So what does it mean that you are the president of Protect?
First of all, you missed the whole part of like me being in the trenches. I saw black water. I was in full protective gear. So, my roots run deep in restoration, and it's been a really good industry to me, and it's been something that I've really been passionate about for a long time, even before we were tackling this through technology and software. But your timeline was spot on. Look, I think the thing that is interesting about CoreLogic in general is the amount of data and insights they have on property because of the rest of the CoreLogic business segments is really exciting to me in particular. A lot of people don't realize that if you're going to buy a house or any sort of property, a lot of that goes through CoreLogic in one way or another, whether it's through the MLS and agents trying to find people the properties that they love, or getting a mortgage on a property. Like there's a high probability like that is flowing through the CoreLogic pipes. In lots of different segments that we play in. CoreLogic has about $2 billion of revenue, and the insurance segment, is a small piece of that. And a lot of that goes through, our other, kind of property assets. However, the focus of the board and of the CoreLogic leadership is to grow the insurance segment significantly, which is why you're seeing a lot of their investment dollars being put into our space. So if you look at the kind of three pillars or business segments of CoreLogic, you've got Find, Buy, and Protect. Find is the assets that real estate agents would use to help people find the homes that they love. Buy is the mortgage assets, and then Protect is everything about protecting properties. So think insurance, assessing risk, climate change. There's so many things that affect how insurance is priced and how claims are handled afterwards. That is what we've brought together under the leadership of my team to really unite all these assets in a way that will benefit our entire ecosystem.
So what triggered CoreLogic to want to grow the Protect side of things?
Yeah, I think, a big part of the strategy for CoreLogic is to not just be mortgage, and CoreLogic is sort of synonymous with mortgage. And so it's a really intentional strategy to make sure that we are growing in the other business segments. And so this is where you'll see our investment and our attention, put. On top of that, there's just such it's really interesting to see people like our current owners, Insights and Stone Point, recognizing that the property insurance space has really been starved of the investment needed and the innovation needed, and they get it, which is really kind of fun to watch. Like they are really keen on bringing innovation throughout the entire space because the opportunity is so big to really transform the way claim handling and the insurance ecosystem operates today. And really, this is a vision a lot of us have been talking about for years, recognizing, gosh, like, we need more competition, we need more innovation. And so now to have like kind of these big resources, excited to deliver that, and to be able to, have the honor of getting to lead the team that does that is like a dream come true for this kind of restoration nerd that has been in this industry for more time than I want to say.
We're going to get there. I have some background questions further down, so we're going to get more personal here. But who does CoreLogic view as the customer for the protect arm of it?
So our customers are everything from restoration contractors to insurance carriers to risk managers. We've got, everywhere from commercial to residential, really anybody who deals in protecting properties, any sort of property. It could be government, like there's so many different properties out there and so many ways that they need to be protected from both, aging infrastructure or wildfire, there's obviously a bunch of like storm damage and tracking when storms come in and how do we do preventative work, and then how do we quickly swarm an area and make sure that we deploy resources. Protecting and restoring properties is a really important segment, and so everybody who is involved in that property ownership journey, whether they own the property or they're obliged to protect it through insurance, they're all customers.
Okay. What is CoreLogic Claims Connect? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So essentially, CoreLogic's Claims Connect is our estimating platform.
Okay.
It is the the tool in which we take our pricing database, which is used both for underwriting, which we now own in our team. So underwriting and risk assessment, all the way through claims handling. And so the Claims Connect is the tool in which people use to estimate using that pricing database.
Okay. All right. So where do you envision InsurTech going now that all of this consolidation is kind of happening within CoreLogic, and it kind of seems like there's these two big players here now. So where do you see InsurTech going within the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think, for me, this is about having more choice and having more integration, right? So yeah, really happy to see Verisk, continue to stay open. We're going to continue to stay open. Obviously, we all have to be careful with security concerns as we're dealing with very important sensitive data. And so that doesn't mean that we all can integrate with everybody. But when it comes between, us and Verisk, where we're both very secure platforms, I think it's really great to see that, the ability for people to choose whether they're carriers or contractors, which set of solutions work best for them. And they should be able to choose, certain things from all of us, or choose, hey, we think it's better to put it all on one platform. Obviously, our goal is to convince people that our whole platform is the best way to operate. But until someone actually believes that, or that is the truth for them, I think it's neat for carriers to be able to choose that they like our auditing tools, but they may still use, somebody else's pricing database, or they like, our scope automation, or they like our scope to estimate automation, and be able to use little bits and pieces from all of us. I think what's really key is that no software or technology or data provider should win just purely because of their market position. They should win because they've got the best products. And so what's cool about this, and kind of the initial thesis for me behind saying, hey, I want to put what to me was a labor of love, the next gear platform, into CoreLogic's hands, is I wanted to create this dynamic for our industry, right? Where now it would force more investment and force, all of us to kind of raise our game. And I'm actually excited to see, Verisk is going to do that. I think we're going to raise our game, and it's going to continue to benefit all players in the space. And I think that's, it's positive for everybody.
So what are you hearing? I know that you're close to contractors and have a lot of good relationships with contractors across the country. So what are you hearing from them that they really want in software platforms at this point?
Yeah, I think it's all about removing friction in the process, right? From a restoration contractor perspective, you have to remember, and like I said, I've been out doing this, long time ago. you're working in very difficult situations, right? You are either in crawl spaces and it could be freezing or it could be super hot, right? You could be in a smoked out house and you have no light, no electricity, and it's just like, smells like smoke, right? And you're just sitting in that environment having to work. You could be, having to suck out black water, which is, horrible. Like, or you can do dead body cleanups. Like these are really, really tough situations that these contractors have to operate in. And so look, like we have to remove friction in every part of the process, which means, while they've got to be documenting, while they have to be getting the scope, created, and while they have to be, thinking through what's the best way to mitigate it and restore these properties, and software and technology can really help drive that, but it needs to actually help and not make it harder. And so, look, I think there is more work to be done, and I'm excited to have the resources now to really tackle these problems.
Okay, so talking about integration, I don't think we can have this conversation without me asking. So Xactware integrates with NextGear. Is Symbility going to integrate with Restoration Manager at some point?
Yeah, we are absolutely in the process of walking through that. Obviously, I should be careful about how much I talk about those conversations. Yep. I think our perspective is that those sorts of agreements should be bidirectional, and they should be on similar terms, and so I think that's just something we're working through. But yeah, our perspective is if we should be integrating with anyone that carriers and contractors agree that they want to work with and agree is a secure platform.
Yep.
And even when they compete with us. And we think that is a principle that everyone should follow. Now, some may look and say, hey, well, there's somebody you haven't integrated with. And one thing you have to go through is, does it hit all of the things we outlined? Do carriers and contractors both agree it's a secure platform? That's probably the number one, or it is the number one threshold item for us to be able to integrate with someone. But in the end, if you look at our Digital Hub Alliance, like we are very aggressive about getting people and lowering the kind of the entry barriers to get connected, so that we can offer people choice.
Okay, so I know the last time we spoke, we talked about data, and contractors are constantly worried about what their data is going to be used for, and we've answered that. And we've talked about that. People can go back and watch our other interview as well. But I want to talk about the data that CoreLogic has that can be helpful to the contractor. What exists that can help the contractor through their process? Yeah,
and there is so much, and this is part of what I'm so excited about, because if you think about our property insights, right? We have schematics on homes. You have inspectors that go in for all sorts of reasons that we have ownership of the schematics. If I could start you out with a sketch, right, or you don't have to do all the work yourself, and maybe you just make slight adjustments. There is a lot that we can do in terms of getting you photos of the pre-loss condition, very quickly assessing the roof quality and the type of home you're dealing with. Is it high end? Is it lower end? Being able to look at the weather data and understanding where did the storm actually go through, to pinpoint accuracy, which policies in force for which carriers were affected, and are they on your program, or do you work with that particular carrier? How many properties were affected? So when we mobilize for cats, we don't over mobilize and we don't under mobilize. If you look at how we're working with dispatching and all sorts of ways of mobilizing resources and trying to match so that everybody gets what they need, that homeowners get restored fast, that carriers don't have a lack of resources at any particular event, and that contractors are matched appropriately with people who are going to pay them. Like, all these things are things that all these little data intersects that we have can create. Now, we're not there yet, but that is the vision of what we're creating.
What about, one of the biggest pain points that contractors are feeling right now is with inflation and pricing issues, right? So is CoreLogic kind of tracking any of that data? And how are Symbility price lists affected by that? Are they getting updated? How do you keep up with that?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and one that like literally today just became part of my purview. So
Okay.
in some ways, you've got to think of this as day one for me. I know that I've been at CoreLogic for a while, but this is kind of the first day that I have, full kind of operating control over all the insurance assets. There's been some work to get here, but it's a huge concern for me. As people are using our pricing databases, there's a couple challenges. One, we have a more granular approach to that, which we feel is a more accurate assessment of the cost of getting things done. The problem is others don't kind of bundle a bunch of things together. And so contractors are not used to making sure they're grabbing all the line items. Now we can do a better job at making that more apparent to them. And so we're working on that as well. But really the pricing databases should be pretty similar because, we're all doing similar studies to figure out, what is the cost. Mm-hmm. Now, that is interesting for all of us right now because inflation is moving so fast. And so it is a challenge that we're having to figure out how to tackle because, you also want to be careful that your price list doesn't fluctuate too often as well, because that will screw up people's, estimates. And so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone. It's one that it's, now a big part of, my responsibilities and my team's responsibilities to make sure we're addressing. In the end, like we are going to be listening to contractors. I'm going to be at RA soon talking about this. We believe that it is critical that we get accurate cost to repair that allow contractors to have the margins they need to be successful, and for carriers to have predictability and understanding of what their reserves need to be and what it takes to get a loss put back to pre-loss condition. And so we're going to be listening to everybody, figuring out how to make that even more and more accurate and easier to use. And again, today is day one, and we're going to tackle the challenge of inflation together.
What is CoreLogic's stance on the pricing within Symbility? Is it meant to be kind of like the Bible of pricing, or is there meant to be like in your market, there might be some fluctuation and you can have more custom price lists and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think, all pricing platforms are a guide, right? And it's really, we're not the end all be all. No one is the end all be all, and every market is different. And so I think, we're a guidepost. And it's up to both the carrier and the contractor to really figure out what the true cost is using these guideposts. And so I think, it's a really, important role to kind of get the guideposts out there and understanding what does the market bear. And I think that's interesting for each contractor to kind of figure out relative to their competition. And so really, pricing databases like ours are guideposts, and they're meant to kind of help establish what we all think the cost is. But in the end, it really is up to the adjuster and the contractor to settle on what the actual cost is.
Okay. So I'm guessing you've been answering this question for years, but what kind of advice do you give contractors who are trying to figure out what software platform to use for their company? There's a lot of choices out there now, and they're all very different. So what advice do you give?
Look, I think when you're trying to reduce friction, you need to think about the number of times you have to enter a piece of information into a disparate system, right? And so, if today, I've walked in and seen people who oh, look at all the things I've set up. They're putting, the customer name or the policyholder's name into Excel, Word, QuickBooks, a job management system, writing it on a whiteboard. All of these things are like duplicate entry. And while maybe it feels efficient in the time, it really isn't. You want to be able to, put the customer name or consume the policyholder's name in and let it go everywhere. Which is why I think integration is so critical, even when you're integrating with your competitors. And so I think when people are looking for what is the right software for me, one, I think how is it integrated and how often do I have to retype information is one of the critical things. The next one is interesting. I think I don't care how great the technology is, if especially for restoration contractors, big companies, when they implement new ERP systems, they have all these resources to help their employees through the change. And so if you are a smaller restoration company or just even a normal size restoration company and you don't have those resources, you need to make sure that you're partnering with a vendor, so we're vendors or a partner that has the resources and dedicates the people to helping you through the change. Because the most expensive part of any software implementation is the actual implementation. Because even if it's the best software since sliced bread, if you fail in your implementation, you have to try again. Like you've just wasted so much time and organizational distraction. And so really, I think about picking what is the software that's going to last you the next 10, 20 years, and who has the team dedicated to make sure you're successful. I think, that plus the integrations and make sure you're on the right tech are the kind of the things you got to think through when you're picking a technology stack.
So what does it take to have a successful onboarding process for a new platform? I mean, I remember when I first got into the industry and there was this huge issue of even getting people to adapt to a new software. So I think we've had more of a generational shift. So maybe that's not so much of a problem now, but there are still some people holding out who are like, nah, I like my pad of paper and whatever. Yeah. So what does a successful onboarding process look like?
Look, I think it's important that any company that's implementing any sort of change be, recognize that we've got to be change resilient and open to going through the hard steps of making change to get to a better outcome in the end. And one way to do that is to really map out your current process and put it on a board and go, look, do you see how many times we do this step and do this step and do this step? And then, will it take us an extra 5 minutes in the field to document in real time? But does that save us an hour in back office work, right? And so understanding that why is really important for pushing through the hard first couple of days of getting people comfortable with doing things out in the field when they used to come back to the office and do it, at night or, after they've been out in the field. Understanding what does that accuracy and that real-time communication actually get you, and then communicating that to your team so that they're comfortable pushing through. But I think there's a huge responsibility on the part of the technology provider to be there every step of the way, to have unlimited training, unlimited support, not nickel and diming you for that training and support, and just being a partner to help you push through that change. And I think if you look at how NextGear staffed are and how the amount of resources we've put into that, and we're going to continue that and expand that even at CoreLogic. That's just a kind of a fundamental principle for us. So I think you really, really, really need to bathe your clients in support options for them to be successful, and then the rest is up to the contractor or the carrier to make sure that they implement the change.
Sure. Have there been any changes within the NextGear platform since September? Are there big changes coming?
I mean, there's a ton of changes. What's amazing now is so NextGear used to be 250 people. Now we're over 1,000 people as a group. Our engineering resources and our engineering spend is ballooned. We have more resources that we're going to be able to grab as we're deciding where should we be innovating and how should we be connecting these dots. So there's already been a ton of change, and there'll continue to be change across all of our products to make sure that we are essentially making it easier and easier and easier for all these different stakeholders to work together and get to better outcomes for everyone involved.
Okay. So I'm curious about you had an amazing culture at NextGear when it was more of a mid-sized company, right? So how are you bringing that culture that you helped build there into a big corporation like CoreLogic?
Yeah, really Pat is the CEO of CoreLogic now. And, that he and the board recognize we're in a different game than a lot of the rest of CoreLogic, right? So in the mortgage place, they are the big player, right? And here, we're kind of the challenger player, and which is a position I've been in, my whole career. And that requires a kind of a unique way of operating and different culture. And if you kind of read carefully through Pat's comments in the press release, he's basically saying, look, this is a big step forward, not only for the Protect and the insurance unit, but also for CoreLogic. CoreLogic is going through a shift as well, and so culturally, we're sort of the tip of the spear in terms of really shaking up the way that CoreLogic operates, but Pat has given us, wide guardrails to operate in a way that will allow us to really keep the best parts of the next gear culture, but with at the same time having the scale and responsibility that a very large insurance asset has to have. So there's a bit of balancing, right? There's things that I'm even going to have to learn and adjust because of our new market position. A lot more compliance. There's a lot that we handle now that's different. However, the root of our passion, which is our culture, which is a passion for customers and a passion for really thinking through and how to be nimble. It's so strong and deep within us that this whole Protect unit is absolutely already operating in that way. So I that's the part I'm most excited about. Culture is sort of the thing that gets me up in the morning, and we have such a fantastic team. Like this is on either the legacy NextGear people and the legacy CoreLogic people. Really, we all thought very, very similarly, and we are now able to in a unified way build a culture that is going to help us win.
All right. So I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of relationships with contractors. I know that you do, and a lot of friends in the industry. Gosh, excuse me. But as you're growing and moving up here, I'm sure people are like, well, is he going to still care about the contractor? So what do you tell people when they say that? Like, do you still care about us?
Still text me and let's see if I respond. I am so passionate about this space. And one of the things I think about is critical to what makes us different is I think there is a win-win between carriers and contractors, right? Like this idea that there has to be this adversarial role, to me, is so outdated and doesn't need to be how we win or how contractors win or carriers win. Like there is a win-win here, and I think it's important that everyone step back and look at the bigger picture. And I intend to be a bridge builder between the carrier world and the contractor world and all the other pieces like IAs, et cetera, and TPAs, MRNs that service this space. And there doesn't need to be a pitting against each other to be successful. Like this is a new world. We can actually find ways of building bridges where people enjoy working together on both sides, even when you have diverging interests. And I think a big part of our culture is when we sit at the table with carriers is explaining some of the dynamic that maybe hasn't been explained to them about the contractor's world and what they live in. And look, like I think there is lots of reasons on both sides why this dynamic has persisted. And I think some software vendors have stoked that dynamic. And our goal at CoreLogic in the Protect business segment is to build a bridge between all of these players so that we remove friction and get to better outcomes for everybody, knowing that the policyholder is at the root of and the center of everything that we do. And I think if we keep that perspective and that lens, that we're going to find ways that contractors feel very, cared for, protected, and included in the ecosystem, which benefits the carrier. Because look, the carrier needs contractors to respond, especially in CAT situations. And so making sure that we're thinking through both of these really important parts of the industry and how they play well together is a big part of what I think we bring to the table for everybody.
Okay. All right. So, now I want to get a little more personal, go back to the boots in Blackwater conversation, I guess. So growing up, did you think, gosh, I want to start a software company someday, or gosh, I want to be in the restoration industry? Like, where did all of this get its start?
It's so funny because
nobody grows up unless maybe mom and dad own a company, but even then most of them are like, no, I'm not working here.
Yeah. This is one of those things that happened completely by accident. In fact, I thought I was going to, be in property management, my whole life. That's like kind of what I did early in my career. And so it's one of those things where I thought for sure I was going to get this job I was interviewing for, because, I had to. Like I was very, very prideful at the time. And I was like, oh, I'm so going to get this job. And then somebody said, well, you should as a backup, like this position is open at this restoration company. And I was just like, oh, like, okay, I'll go, but I'm getting this job. So, as luck would have it, like, no, I didn't get that job. I didn't get offered that job at all. They totally passed on me. And so I took this backup position at a restoration contractor, a small one in Los Angeles. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I walked in to this like pandemonium of like files all over the place and people running around with adjusters on hold, looking for files. And I just remember going to the owner of that business and they're like, hey, like if I went and got you more business, because I was hired as a marketer, how would you handle it? You have paperwork stacked this high on everyone's desk. And he's like, oh, we can always stack it higher. And so I just thought, oh my gosh, there's gotta be a better way to do this. And it just kind of triggered in me, like just kind of this problem solving thing that I thought was, really important and fun to figure out how to differentiate this company through, doing something that was less paper intensive. And in order to figure that out, I had to get out on the truck and I had to do pack outs and I had to understand, what was actually being done in the field and the documentation requirements and how to do that. And honestly, like there's so many iterations of how we got here. One of my favorite iterations is at one point created this like janitorial cart that had a car battery with like alligator clips that went to an inverter that had headlights and a printer. And it took like 2 people to lift out of a box truck. Definitely not OSHA approved. This was like probably very dangerous. But that was back when you had like these satellite cards that, internet cards that you could stick into your computer. And like, but we would print off our contracts, have them signed, scan them, upload them back to a file system. And so it just kind of started with experimenting and really focusing on something that, wasn't necessarily the highest focus for anybody at the time. There was lots of consultants that were, focused on how do you estimate better, or how do you drive faster or more efficiently. And I just kind of, got in this niche of how do you do the business of restoration, more efficiently, and how do you attack the paper monster? Oh
my gosh, I remember that.
Remember that? Like this is like we're fighting this paper monster, and it's really been like the fight of my life of like, fighting the status quo of how things were done. I look back and you could almost always see this dynamic. Like I kind of felt, I didn't know how we were going to get there, but I knew that we had to transform something that was, very paper intensive. And so, I went to do that, but like, there was also this idea that like, there needs to be choice and there needs to be innovation. And that thematically has been, a big part of my journey in this space. This industry has been like amazing to me. Like I have so many friends and, so many people have supported us throughout the whole process. I've learned so much from everybody. And, I'm excited to, I think a lot of people thought when I sold NextGear, I was just headed to the beach and just
into the sunset.
Yeah. And I think, I'm excited that I get the opportunity to actually not leave and, hopefully continue to contribute positively to this space, because I feel like I owe it a debt of gratitude.
So I know family and stuff is really important to you. Who have been some of your biggest cheerleaders along the way? I mean, this has been quite a journey since starting NextGear in 2008 and even before that. So who have been some of your biggest cheerleaders in your life?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm married to an amazing man who has like made my life like simple in every other aspect. So I could spend, time focusing on this business. A lot of people know my mom and sister have worked at NextGear for an amazing amount of time, and they work incredibly hard. I had my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. I mean, this is from a family perspective been, a lot of support both, on the field and off the field. But I think the magic of NextGear is, on top of, the family and all the people and the customers is like our journey at NextGear was really the 5 founders, or 6 founders, if you include me, of different companies that came together. And so if you think through like the founders who are still on this team, like couldn't have done any of this without them. And the fact that they still stick around with this group shows like the passion for what we're trying to accomplish. And it really is our secret sauce. And even as we're in CoreLogic with the, the team that we, brought together from CoreLogic, our team, like those founders are still here and still working every day to realize a vision that we've had both individually before we all came together, then collectively, and now in this new organization. It's a really special thing because I think you don't typically get as many founders that work this well together. And it's the team that we've assembled is a humbling team, like from the founders to the executives that really are more qualified to run these companies than I am. It's really amazing to just see all of these people come together and really have this passion to realize a dream that we've been working on for a long time.
Okay, before we wrap it up, I'm curious if you have any favorite professional development resources that you rely on. Like, do you have some favorite books, some favorite podcasts, that kind of stuff?
I am so the worst at this question. I
am too.
So like, I am not like I should be. I should like be listening to podcasts more. I should be reading more. I feel like all I do is work all day and then try to go see my kids. Yep. And so, and now I've been working out more. So that's a little bit, more in my day-to-day stuff. But like, I am so bad at listening to all, here's my advice on that. Like, I think these things can be super helpful, but I also think like, just go do it. Like, if you look back at it, like next year, we should have never done what we did. Like we were in some ways foolish, like to think that we could do what we did, but we just kind of did it and persevered. And, I think all those things can be helpful, but if you're trying to accomplish something, sometimes just doing it is, and you may fail or it may succeed. And we had lots of failures that we had to deal with. So I think, I don't really have any great actual podcast advice. I feel really bad about that. But my advice to anybody who is, looking for that kind of stuff is sometimes just do it.
I totally agree. And a lot of the advice that's out there, I hate to say this, has kind of already been said. Like, how many times are you going to hear the same thing? Like, at some point you got to stop listening and just go.
I think that's right. Like, I think like, look, if that's helpful to you, great. But like, don't let it distract you from actually getting out there and trying and failing and trialing. Like, that's the best teacher, is actually trying and hopefully not failing too bad. But failure is good. You learn from it.
You learn.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, Garrett, thank you so much. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think that one, I'm super grateful to probably anybody who's listening to this, because this whole industry has been had amazing impact on my life. This is really me doubling down and sticking around for the long haul, and with, now a big challenge in front of me and my team. And, we're open to feedback, and we want to hear what people think we should be focused on. We know we're not anywhere near perfect yet, but we've got big aspirations and big goals. And now we've got big resources to tackle them, which I've never had before. So, next year and everything we've done earlier in my career was on a shoestring. And so now, we get actually to have real resources, which is why I'm not sleeping, because I'm so jazzed.
I love it. Well, congrats, Garrett. And thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you at RIA and keeping the conversation going.
Exactly. Thank you.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.